man is talking to God. God, how long is 1,000,000 years? God answers, to me, it's a minute. God, how much is $1,000,000? To me, God says, it's a penny. God, may I have a penny? God says, wait a minute. This morning, two sides of the curtain. What in the world am I talking on? I am very influenced by revisiting my experience and connection with the Kabbalah, is really the true pronunciation, but we say Kabbalah in our language. And I think it is one of the greater tools, beside, of course, the miracles, to help us to really get back home in our mind where we've never left. But we think we have. We believe we have. And I was encouraged or inspired for this message based upon the Kabbalah idea. In fact, I so am ignited again with the Kabbalah that I'm considering offering a Kabbalah class at 10 to 10:45 on Sunday mornings in the Lighthouse. If I can get enough people interested, I don't need a lot of people, but if you would like to have a more intimate, close discussion, and we can go through some of the principles behind the Kabbalah, I'm more than glad to do that with you. I think it's important. In the Kabbalah, it says that truly what people are at the core, the essence of themselves, is desire. I thought about that. I contemplated that idea. The core of every being is desire. I kind of understand that everything that drives us is a desire to be better, a desire to be peaceful, a desire to be happy, a desire to bring joy in our life, our desire to fulfill our purpose for why we're on the earth and why we've incarnated into this human experience at this time in the 21st century. Why am I here? What's my reason for being here? And how can I contribute to bring the highest and best to humanity? The Kabbalah says that this can be done when it no longer becomes a belief system or a philosophy, but becomes action. Desire drives action. If you have a desire enough to do something, you will get active in how to bring that desire forth. If the flame of your desire is low, then you enter into and get stuck in a blockage that's in your third solar plex chakra called procrastination. That's where we find people get writer's block, and people have great ideas up here, but they can't seem to get it out here. It gets stuck somewhere around the solar plex area, which is also the place of the fire element. Fire burns. Of course, the miracle says fire burns illusion. And we want to be a people. It says, if people are the essence of desire and the universe is flooded with light, what's standing in the way of our everlasting happiness? A question. We know that at HeartLight. We know that there is a dimension or dimensions beyond this dimension in which we are whole, where we don't need to be healed because we are whole. We know that there are places and dimensions to attain, to rediscover ourselves upon those dimensions. It's not that we need to go to that dimension, for we're already present in that dimension. But how do I manifest that into the mundane of my life? The answer to this is what is keeping us from everlasting happiness and manifestation. The answer is a curtain. A curtain. Kabbalah teaches two sides of the curtain. the 1% and the 99%. So we're going to talk about that a little bit this morning. According to the Kabbalah, there's a curtain that divides our reality into two realms, which Kabbalah identifies as the 1% and the 99%. The 1% realm encompasses our physical world, but this is only a tiny fraction of all of creation. You know, I used to know the numbers, but I was amazed to read the numbers some time ago, a few years ago, about how narrow it is for life to exist on this planet. It's a very small, it just goes underground a few feet and it's above us. Once we get out of those areas, we could not survive. That's why in an airplane you need oxygen, because you're out of the sphere of living on the planet. It's very narrow before we start entering outside of the scope of the ecosystems. It's the same way in the spirit world. What the ego has convinced us is that most of the experiences of the mundane are the biggest part of our life, our human experiences. It tries to make us think that actually the dimension we call heaven is a more narrow mystical experience. But the Kabbalah says no, it is 99% of what is available to us out of the 1%. The 1% is only a tiny fraction of creation. It is only what we perceive through the 5 senses, how we smell, taste, touch, see, or hear. Once you start building a life experience based upon what the 5 senses feeds back to you, you live in a very limited dimension of existence. But one of the things that evolution has given us that has been a blessing, and was a blessing many billions and millions of years ago, to get us to where we are today, to develop more than just the physical evolution, but the entrainment and connection of conscious evolution with physical evolution. Consciousness is relatively a new part of the story of evolution. For many, many ages and eons, we only went by our ability to survive as a species, passing down our genetics, our DNA, and surviving that way in our offspring and genetics. This is even huge in the Old Testament, in the Bible. There's so much who beget who beget who beget. There's chronicles of names, and the son of Abraham, the son of Isaac, the son of... It was just all about that, because this is what they believed immortality was. It was the passing down of the ancestral story, the DNA. And now we have moved, by bringing consciousness into the evolutionary story, we have actually evolved beyond this second chakra part of the story of procreation through sexual attraction. Through sexual attraction. That was the first thing it was developed for. And that's what it was used for at one time. It wasn't used as a physical, lustful attraction of the joy of the moment. But it was there for the purpose of us. And it still goes on in the world of nature. You'll know that the story of so many species is right down to giving their life for that few seconds of passing on their genetics and bringing forth an offspring. They will die for it. We have that part of the story, but we developed something that the animals and insects and other parts of nature did not have when we developed this frontal cortex, this ability to imagine and to go beyond instinct. We don't no longer have to live by our sympathetic and parasympathetic part of our nervous system, fight and flight, survival mechanism. But we were given the powers that is our inheritance from our creation of being able to be co-creative, moving from procreation to co-creation. This gave us God status. Little G-O-D, but it is God status. We become joined into the responsibility of the creative story of mankind, starting with ourself. You know, in the story in the book about the garden and all of that, finally God in the story gives mankind dominion over all the earth. But before that, he said, I'm going to give you a garden. Let's see how well you do with the garden. God has given you a garden of life. That is your personal life that you live in. How are you handling your personal garden? If you're handling it well, then God could expand what else that you can be in more, for a better word, in control of. And I use that in the highest form of spiritual. Of not being what the Kabbalah calls being reactive, but moving into the consciousness of being proactive. So either you're living by instinct, you're living by your nervous system, you're living by the bit of memory that is connected into the nervous system at the unconscious, subconscious level that is driving your life even when you don't know it and you're not conscious of it, because we don't live proactive, but we live mostly, in most of the day, in a reactive state. Here at HeartLight, one of our greatest visions of our purpose for being here is to help us to grow up. This is why I'm sure some of the messages and what we do here is not attractive to so many people, because people still want to be fed the milk of the Word. The Bible says, the milk of the Word. They want to be the victim. They want God to be separate. They want God to be the shepherd. They want God to help them out of everything. But there are some that has come out of that state into what I call adolescent stage. This is a mixture. To be adolescent, you're too young and you're too old at the same time. Isn't that what your folks said to you all the time? When you want to do something, you're too old for that. Or you're too young to do that. So we have people that's kind of in that place. But what we're looking for are those who are becoming co-creative spiritual adult and taking the responsibility of entering in to how we want to co-create first our garden. If you do the garden well, then I can give you more. And we call that finding the place of the initiate. To become an initiate. When God says, there's enough of me that you have found in you that we can now co-creatively work together to recreate destiny. Individually as well as collectively. In the 1% realm, life has an annoying habit of catching us off guard. We are afflicted with something called the suddenly syndrome. What do I mean? He had a heart attack. He had a sudden heart attack. All of a sudden, he walked out on her. Suddenly, we were short of cash. A deal suddenly fell through. She suddenly changed her mind. The doctor suddenly found a lump. Life suddenly felt so empty. For some reason, we think that things just suddenly happen out of nowhere. And what I was saying about our evolutionary thing of the fact that we have developed this godlike equal power into the human experience and become conscious of it enough that we don't realize how we're misusing it or using it to create the life that we have. And I think there's still a little part of us that sometimes when life catches off and we go unconscious and we go to reactive mode or the mechanics of that, we tend to revert back to the baby stage, the adolescent stage, and we want to be rescued. I wish it was that easy, and trust me, I've been in this over almost 60 years, and if just using God and Jesus as the archetype of magicians would have worked, I'd be in a much different place today. And what I'm saying to you, if it just was such things as all you ask in my name I shall do, wow, would I be in a different place today. But I've learned in my experience, and maybe you have, that no matter how hard I prayed or what sacrifices I made for prayer, some things just does not happen. Now, some things do happen, and the things that does happen are the things you are responsible for. Because you did it, you can undo it. Are you with me? What you've done, you have to take responsibility, and you can pray to God until the cows come home. That's an old Oklahoma saying. Till the cows come home, and there is no answer for you because you have to take the responsibility of what you have created or miscreated into your life to undo it. One of the great stories for this in the Kabbalah is the great story of the opening of the Red Sea. The opening of the Red Sea. It is one of the most famous stories in the Kabbalah, is the story of the Red Sea. And you all know quickly that the story has to do with the children of Israel who had been in slavery for over 400 years. And finally, it's time for their release out of that condition of being under the Egyptian culture and Pharaoh. And after 10 plagues, sometimes it takes a lot to get people to move. Oh my God, I hope we don't have to go through 10 variances. Come on, 2's enough. But to think of 10, that it took them 10 different plagues to wake them up and say, your time has come, you are getting ready to change your citizenship. You will no longer. But the thing was, they had adapted. And that's what I'm going to tell you. In evolution, there was a time that we needed to adapt to the conditions to survive. But now, that which has blessed us in the beginning can end up betraying us in the end. Because now that ability that we've done so well to adapt has turned on us as we adapt our lack, our needs, our illness, our sickness, our diseases, and our identity in the world of wound. Be careful what you attach to the term I am. Yes, if I were and had been, say, an alcoholic, I don't know that personally I could go 20 years later after not drinking anything and go and keep going to a meeting that says, I am an alcoholic. I mean, my God, how long will it take for you to change your identity? To I'm a survivor of alcoholism and I choose to flourish as I co-create my destiny and my future without it. That's good Course in Miracles. It's not a cover-up, it's an undoing system. I watch myself saying, I'm tired all the time. Is the God in me tired? That's the thing about the Course that got me when it says, forgive me for the sin you think I've committed. For if you think you've committed sin, so have I, because we are one. That got me. It stopped me in my tracks. That if I'm dared to believe that God has only one manifested self, coded Son of God. That's what Son of God means. It means the one coded expression of the one into expression. Then how can we say even me and you or them if it wasn't for them? We are poised against each other to be us and them. Politically, religiously, he's been doing it for a long time, that if I'm a Catholic and not a Baptist, then you're wrong. And the Baptist says if you're not a Baptist and you're a Catholic or whatever, you're wrong. And look at the world we live in as a result of that kind of thinking, because the power of thought has been all along building up in the unconscious until it suddenly shows up. But the start of it was not at the moment that any of these that I read, that the heart attack happened. If you go back and find the heart attack could be because of the foods you've eaten for decades. Huh? All the fried food and this, that, and another that's been going on for 30, 40, 50 years in you, and you think, all of a sudden I had a heart attack. And I'll tell you, once you have the heart attack, it's a lot harder than doing something about it way back before you have a sudden heart attack. This is what my prayers are for myself and you. I know better. I know the things that I need to do that would give me a better quality of life, that many times I'm so knocked out consciously, I do not do it. My prayer is, give me the wisdom and the strength to not be knocked out consciously into a reactive mode, but I stay mindful and proactive in all of the decisions that I'm making, because every decision is building and building and building until it suddenly manifests. The Kabbalah says you cannot put a diseased seed into the ground and expect a non-disease tree or bush or vegetable or whatever you're planting. Most likely, if the seed is diseased, then what it's going to produce will be diseased. We have to put the axe at the root of the tree, the teacher said, meaning that we have to go back to the seed that has been growing for a long time, until all of a sudden we wonder about it. And here's what I'm getting to, is we're too okay about that. It's like, oh my God, I'm 50, 60, 70 years old. Of course I'm going to have arthritis. Or my mother had arthritis. My grandmother had arthritis. And we adapt too well that this is the normal. It has become the normal of the third dimension, but it's not normal in the higher fifth dimension. Once you cross the curtain out of the 1% into the 99%, it is no longer normal. This says, did you ever wake up one morning and suddenly find a full-grown oak tree standing tall on your front lawn? Of course not. Suddenly, yesterday it wasn't there, but I looked at the window and suddenly this big oak tree just showed up. Somewhere in the past, a seed was planted When a nasty problem suddenly pops up and cuts off the flow of happiness that was fulfilling a particular desire of yours, according to Kabbalah, this is not just some random chaotic event. There exists a deeper cause. Somewhere in the past, the seed was planted. This is one, I think, of the wisdom and genius of such modalities and tools as soma energetics. Because we're trying to find the seed that has been planted in the grounds of the unconscious and subconscious mind. But you see, people don't flock to that because all they want is not to hurt. Get rid of my pain. I want my eyes to be better. I want my ears to be better. I want this to be better. Can you fix me? Can you fix me? Can you fix me? But nobody wants to go deep into the ground and find the seed. And this is why the universe has given us so many different tools to help us and assist us to do that. But they are not our destiny. They are a means to the destiny which is awakening and remembering who we are and who we have always basically been. The Sunley syndrome originates in our inability to see through the illusions of our lives in the 1% realm. We cannot see beyond the immediate turmoil in order to grasp a big picture. The big picture. What is the big picture? The big picture is all things work together for good unto them that love God. There's a good one. Do you believe that? Oh, it's a great idea. I mean, I love it. It's a scripture. In metaphysics, we want to believe that. But where is the manifestation of that? We must look. So the 99% realm is the source of everlasting fulfillment. All knowledge, wisdom, and joy dwell in this realm. It is the dominion of the Kabbalists, what the Kabbalists call light. Now, I'm doing this because this is a flip, kind of like, really? It seems so hard to get into the state of the heavenly states. But the Kabbalah says, no, it's 99% of what's available to you. You don't have to work as hard to get to some place because you feel so limited living in just 1% of the evolution of consciousness. And of course, we think consciousness has evolved much more than we think it is, and most of it is through the illusion of technology. Technology has shown us how smart and evolved we are. This is now the term for being really cool. To be with it, to be in step with society and culture, is your ability to use your phones and your text and your Instagrams and all of these things that are going on today that some of us here are having a little bit of a challenge doing, that makes us feel sometimes a little less. We're not as smart as our grandkids and kids are, who are inherently wired to do these kind of things. I comfort myself to do the best that I can and not worry about the rest. Plus, I have Tim. That's beside the point. It's easy for me to say, huh? So we live in what they call the 1%. I would call it third dimension. The 3D world is the 1% world. I would call moving into the 99% the retuning of our vibratory frequency of who we are to fifth dimension. And when I say fifth dimension, I'm not isolating any dimensions above. But fifth dimension is the access or portal or door to access multi-sensory or multi-dimension. It is the curve in third dimensional linear time. There was a curtain or a veil that was shutting off the place in which the presence of God of the Old Testament dwelled into the most holy of holy places. There was a curtain. And people couldn't go beyond that curtain. Only one could go once a year, and that was the high priest, who went in for the atonement of all the 2 million or so Israelites that were living. The 200 million Israelites, or however the number was, didn't all have to go in there to get forgiveness. Just one had to go in. But here's what the one had. He had 12 stones in the breastplate. The sardis stone, all these stones. In fact, they're back there on the wall. When I preached this some years ago, someone here ordered that for me, the breastplate of the priest with the 12 stones. It's back on that wall. But each stone represented an entire tribe of Israel. There were 12 tribes, and there was 12 stones. And every tribe, whatever the number was represented by that one stone. So in other words, the one priest went in for everybody. Everybody got the benefit of what the one did. And that's why when we come in here and we meditate, and this wonderful meditation of breathing in something and breathing it out to the world is so powerful. Because then we become a channel. We become a conduit to extend out into the world in the third dimension more from what is in the higher dimensions. Making it more accessible for people who have opened their heart and said these words, there must be a better way. That's all the Course is. All you have to do, a little willingness, and just say there's got to be a better way than this, and your heart becomes open for higher dimension to begin to come in and be more accessible to you. But 2,000 years ago, after thousands of years of this curtain shutting off, the Shekinah presence of God, Shekinah is the female aspect of the divine. It was the presence of God, which was shut off to the people, individually only to the high priest. One of the works of the manifestation of God incarnated into the human experience became a consciousness. Follow me. 2,000 years ago, we were not conscious. There's nothing in the Old Testament that speaks of the divine in the human experience. It's all about the 1% of humanity following 613 laws, and therefore that's how you were accepted as a moral good person, was by keeping as many of the laws that you could, which was a failure system. It did not work. And that's why it says there was a need for a new covenant, because the first one just did not work, and nobody could live up to all of these little nitpicking little laws, like not eating shellfish and wearing certain materials together. All of that became so complicated, it became the burden of the people. Remember, we just talked about this, and Jesus came and said, I know you're under the burden of the law, but I'm going to teach you a new yoke, a new yoga, a new way to join a higher covenant. One of the first things that was done, I want you to get this again. All along, The divine had incarnated into the human experience from the very beginning. But it was not made conscious until 2,000 years ago. You know, as much as I love studying Buddha, which I really enjoy, Buddha's life and how he became an enlightened human being, he never became enlightened to his divinity in the human experience. He became an enlightened human. 700 years after that, another shows up, which is another incarnation of the divine, as it started with the first Adam in the dust and shows up in Abraham and Moses and all the great prophets until the incarnation had raised its consciousness through David, King David, who set forth a way for the Spirit to show up in the bloodline of mankind. That's called the house of Judah. And I won't get into all of that, but David was so different from all the other 19 kings of Israel. He was so different. He came from a whole different level. He came from such a level that it brought song to his soul. So he went around singing all the time. And scribes were writing down the songs, and you have them as the Psalms of your Bible. David touched into something that was so beyond the law of Jehovah and Yahweh, the God of Israel, that it made him dance. I'm watching a movie right now about King David. Richard Gere is playing him. It's tremendous. And I thought I'd like to bring that little section here and show you when they're using the tambourines and the cymbals and they're dancing and whatever, how powerful it is, because David's ability to celebrate a higher dimension than the one of war, because he was a king in the time of horrible wars. Killings, slaughtering, but out of that he rose up to a higher dimension out of that which he was born in and reached into the higher dimension that was transcendent of all of that. And the beautiful story about that is what he reached into was an age that was yet to come and happened 2,000 years ago. He literally, the Bible said, tasted of the world to come. Now people are in another transition of another agreement. We've had the old agreement of Aaron, and we've had the new agreement under Melchizedek, and now we are being called to the transition of a new agreement between the divine and the human. And it's not a transition first, it's a transaction that is being made. I don't know what it's about. It's something new that has never been. It's not a repeat of what used to be. It has nothing to do with indigenous people. It has nothing to do with that. That should be completed in the 2,000 years of entering into this new covenant of Melchizedek. Though it was a 2-day, 2,000-year time in which we should have got our act together. And it's called, I give you grace to get it together. I remember you back when I used to get bills in the mail. Remember that? You get a bill and a payment due, and it says due on the 1st of October, but it gave me 10 days. That's called a grace period. 2,000 years, man was given a grace period to get their act together. Some has not. And we're reaping the fact that we have not arrived at the level of consciousness to stabilize and normalize the new covenant, the new agreement, the new covenant that is trying to be made with us now. So the minute that finally someone said, I am God in a human experience, which was not done, now get this, it was not done by preaching and by ministering it or by revelation or by prophecy. It came in manifestation of one who became God and man. Yeshua Jesus was known as the Son of God, but at the same time he was the Son of Man. At that moment, God as a consciousness was awakened in the human experience, and we call that Christ consciousness. Let's not throw that word around. It's not a word to talk about. It is an experience to have. It is the uniting of the divine in you becoming the consciousness within your human story. Let this mind be in us that was in Christ Jesus, who thought it not robbery to be equal with God. What I'm saying and why I'm bringing up the 2,000-year experience of the Christ being made manifest for the first time was that the veil or the curtain was rent from top to bottom. We should have a picture there somewhere of that. It was rent in Matthew. It says that it was rent from top to bottom. Here's the 1% now open to the 99%. Those up in the human experience was now, the curtain was torn and opened and accessible to all the principles of creation, which we call divine mind, divine principle. I think about the show that used to say, is it behind curtain 1 or curtain 2 or curtain 3? What is that you seek and you ask for and you pray for is already accomplished and done. That seems to be the common theme here in everything that we teach and we talk about, of the fact that we are not a people of lack and need as it appears to be. It does appear that way. A lot of things appear to be what they're not. You know, and of course my favorite one is the one about the sun rising. That's always a good one for me. That the sun rises in the west and goes down in the east. Sure looks like it, doesn't it? Sure, I put all my money on it. But I'd lose because it's not the truth. Showing you appearance isn't always the truth. What appears in your life is not always your truth. When you're sick and you're ill, that is not your truth. When you're in lack of something in your life, it is not your truth. And knowing the truth will make you free from the illusion. Instead of suddenly I had a heart attack, suddenly I'm whole. And a miracle takes place in that moment. In the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. We shall not all sleep in the illusion of mankind, but we shall awaken to our innate and divine inheritance. So let me kind of close here in a little bit. The brief summary of the 1% versus the 99%, and I'll stop. The 1% reality is the world of 5 senses. It is a realm of chaos in which, one, we react to external events. Think about it. Be careful watching the news and all of that, because you're going to react to what it looks like and how they're reporting it, how they put it together. And that's one thing about news today. In most cases, it's more like a production and a drama. They don't tell us the big picture. Most of what they say is a very small part of the story that is going on. So therefore it is our place to connect to the bigger picture. Fulfillment is temporary and fleeting. Effects, symptoms, and reactions preoccupy us. In the 1%, we see ourselves as victims who apparently suffer because other people's actions and external circumstances molds us and shapes us. There seems to be no hope for bringing about permanent positive change because any change that occurs in the temporary is therefore illusionary. The majority of our desires remain unfulfilled. Isn't it the truth? If we'll be honest with ourselves, no matter how many workshops, how many books we read, how many classes we go to, how many affirmations we do, it certainly helps people to move from a more negative to a more positive outlook on life, but we still feel the unfulfillment of the deep desire to remember through experience who we are. You can't just believe who you want to be. You have to experience who you are. Murphy's Law governs the realm of 1%. Everything that can possibly go wrong will go wrong. Even when things go well, we know they'll change, for we live in an endless cycle of up and down. Isn't it the truth? In the 99%, reality lies beyond human perception, and it is a world of absolute order, perfection, and spiritual light. That's what you have to find in this time of disorder. If you're going to be spiritual, now, if you're going to be religious, you're going to fall for all this religious prophecy of the end of the world and the apocalypse and God's punishment upon mankind and all of that. But if you want to be spiritual, which we're supposed to represent here, being spiritual, we have to see that there is no disorder that has not been deeply ordered, called the theory of chaos. The theory of chaos. What is happening in my life has been ordered. Why? So that I might collapse time frames and lifetimes and everything in the linear and end up in a more awakened to light state quicker. And that is what is upon us right now. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, and wake up quick. And there's got to be enough of us to reach that critical place. The realm of action rather than the reaction of external events. The source, the seed, the hidden origin of the physical world. The world of total fulfillment, infinite knowledge, and endless joy is waiting for us behind the curtain. So we can stay on this side of the curtain and pray for things to happen because we think we don't have it, or we can go where the curtain has been torn and open to us. And there, it's not that we will manifest it, it is that it will manifest as us. And the Word became flesh. The Word became flesh. We're too busy trying to be well, trying to be whole, trying to be this, trying to be all these wonderful metaphysical principles and ideas, when all we should be doing is creating sacred space within ourselves, entering more into the silence of the I am presence, and allowing that which already is to become in us. For that, you need to set a time for some practice. Practice the presence. Practice the silence. Practice moving out of the third dimensional world. Find your sacred space. And allow. It is a dimension in which we can initiate positive, lasting changes, permanent change, and that also manifests into our 1%. So I thought about a little parable that I wanted to share with you real quickly of how it said that Jesus left the 99 and went to the one. It's a story about 100 sheep, and it said that Jesus left all 99 and went to the one. What is that saying to you? It says that out of the dimensions of perfect creation, the divine shows up in the 1%. Why? To lead us and expose the 99% that becomes accessible to us. That's why I will not in any way throw out this important point of consciousness, where consciousness shows up in man's human experience. 2,000 years ago, you wouldn't even be talking about Christ consciousness. There'd be no word for it. We would not be in any way talking about Christ in us, the hope of glory, Christ as us. These would not exist if it had not been that something came out of the 99% and came to the 1%, because the one little sheep was lost, and he left all the 99 and said, I'm going to the one who's lost. Lost what? Their memory. They no longer know who they are. They're walking in a pseudo-self that I did not create them to be. They are trying to access through lack. And I'm back to restore and bring them back into connection. It is finished, he said. That was his famous words. It is finished. So bottom line, whatever you get out of this, I want you to know you're standing behind a curtain that has been torn and open to you, and you have access today to the divine light, which is the majority. Whatever the percentage is makes no difference to me. I'm not into numbers, but there are more spirit than there is human experience. There is more light than there is darkness. There is more wholeness than there is illness and separation. There is more abundance than there are lack. There is more of everything that you are desiring to see in your life. It's abundant. It's not a thing in which somebody's going to lose. I always use the apple pie thing. You have all these pieces of the apple pie, and you don't want anybody to get a piece of the apple pie because it's less for you if somebody gets a piece of the apple pie. But the Spirit said, learn the recipe that made the apple pie, and you can make all the apple pies you want to, and you'll never know the lack of apple pie again. Let us pray. Holy Spirit, we thank you. We recognize you in this moment as the true teacher. I've done my best to interpret what you have laid upon my heart, and what the human mind does not understand because it thinks the curtain is still up and has not realized the curtain has been rent from top to bottom, and the way has been made into the most holy in ourselves, which is the secret place of Elion, the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, without mother, without father, without ending of days. Most of what is said today is not new ideas. We've heard them many ways and many different perceptions and teachings. But today, instead of suddenly having a heart attack, suddenly getting sick, how about suddenly we awake? And in the intense of that presence of the Shekinah burns away the illusions in our minds of separation and doubt and fear, anxiety, depression, and all the weights that weigh us down into this third dimensional world. We cut the cords of the balloon, the air balloon that wants to be free to move into the beautiful blue sky, into the heights. Help us to cut those cords that ties us to a false identity. Holy Spirit, help us to remember who we are. Just for a moment of silence, Receive. That's what Kabbalah means, to receive wisdom that has been hidden from the ages. Breathe into it. Feel births within your conscious, the sprouting of new hope, new vision. The deep knowing in the core of your being that all things are working for the highest good, no matter how I view it or perceive it to be. Truth will reign over illusion. I am free in this moment. In this moment, I choose to awaken to my wholeness, to my freedom, to my blessing, and the blessing of life.
Time to let your heart light shine. Time to let your